Hello, thank you for tuning in to another JD channel video in which I just had a surgery, so that's why I'm wearing these blinders, but a little restless, so decided to change out the clutch master cylinder on the Integra, which this is the replacement clutch master cylinder and the save cylinder I'll be using. I got these from Rock Auto, which go into this Project Integra. You'll notice that something's different, which I just upgraded the brakes, so now time to try to replace the clutch master cylinder. Now with 246,000 miles, it's not fully out, but it is leaking, and so that's why I have all this grime in here. And I thought, well, the sun's up, I'm going to try to get this done. The hardest thing I've heard is there's a cotter pin up there, which I'm going to try to address right now. And then I'm going to drain the clutch fluid and switch out the clutch master cylinder and the slave. Stay tuned, this is going to be fun. One thing highly I would suggest is get something like this paint pan to catch any loose brake fluid and put this underneath whatever you're working on, because when you do the clutch master cylinder, odds are it's going to leak on the ground, and this will catch it. Then you could just dump it in your receptacle. I'm using this as a bleeder. I had some leftover piping from a project I had, so first I'm going to bleed out the clutch fluid through the slave cylinder, which I'll use my light to show it. So let me grab my light and put the pan underneath and let's start. Alright, so I'm ready with this, which I would really highly recommend that the car was cold when this happened. Had to go to the store to pick up some stuff, so the header and everything were hot. So now I'm going to get the light, show where the bleeder valve is, and bleed out the clutch. Alright, so trying to hold both the camera and the light, taking an 8mm flare wrench, loosen the valve and have it go into the bleeder to drain the clutch fluid. Okay, this is my 10-12. Hold on a second. You need the 10-12 for the hard lines. See if I have a better. Okay, so right here you have the clutch master cylinder bleeder valve, and then you loosen it and just pump it out with the clutch pedal. Okay, make sure the bleeder doesn't come off. There's a little space in here. Okay. Finding the right hose was a little difficult. But yeah, using your flare wrench, the 8mm. Actually, put that on first and then put the the 8mm wrench, and then the bleeder, then bleed it out. Because there already see some fluids coming out anyway, so probably a little loose, and oops. Well, this is why I have the pan underneath to catch. So loosened it. And I just need to loosened it, the bleeder back, and this really isn't going to be that important until I actually bleed the thing later. But nope. And of course, make sure your line is down. Crud. Face downward and pump it out. It'll take a couple of tries, so pump it out and catch it, and then we'll move on to. Okay, so since I already drained the fluid, which I'm afraid to start it since the fitting came off and I think it's squared on the fan, so we're not going to turn that on till tomorrow, just in case. So there's two nuts and a cotter pin. There's a cotter pin that connects the pedal and the clutch master cylinder, which that is a pretty hard one to do, so I already did that already. This is the cotter pin, or where is it? It's right here. I used a small screwdriver for that. The nut here on the corner is a little difficult to get to. Some people use a longer extension. I just use the basic one that comes in your basic Harbor Freight toolkit, and a longer 12. Some people use the really long one in a wobble. I don't see the necessity for it. And then you have the nut here, which is easy to get to. Once you do that, it'll come off the firewall. And as you can see, it's kind of been leaking, so that nasty stuff went into the carpet, which sucks, but that's why we're changing it. So take those two off, and then the cotter pin, and then take it out from the front, and I'll show you once it's fully out. To take out the reservoir, there's two 10mm bolts here to remove with the 10mm socket, of course. It's right on here, right next to the brake master cylinder, so don't get those confused, it's the little one. And then down here, sorry for the light, down here of course is your clutch master cylinder, which I did note it is easier to leave at least one bolt in. So I would emphasize this, and I'm sure a lot of more mechanics do, to avoid stripping the line, use a 12mm, I guess you call this box wrench, or try to remember what you call it, either a box wrench or flare wrench, that's what it is. Use the 12mm flare wrench to take off the hard fitting, so at least you don't strip it, and then your reservoir will just come right out along with the clutch master cylinder. So once you get that fitting out, then take out the last bolt inside, and then it's free. And I'll show you what the clutch master cylinder looks like. And here it is, the clutch master cylinder with all its glory. Which, don't forget to take off the reservoir because you got to transfer that over. There's a gasket here that you obviously got to take, because I don't think this one will come with it, but just in case, I'm going to take this crunchy gasket and I guess I got to put it back. Sucks. And where was this? So here is where that cotter pin was in the fitting, which, where is it? I guess it's still in the car. I think I left the car parts inside the car. Sorry about the terrible lighting, just because now it's nightfall. So this is what connects the this is what connects the clutch pedal to the clutch master cylinder, and then you have the cotter pin that goes inside it, which is, sorry, I'm grabbing the cotter pin. Let's see in here. Here's a better view. So this is the pin that goes to the clutch master cylinder and the cotter pin. And I did make a mistake when I said the size of the fitting for the hard line. It actually is a 10 because I have a 10 and 12 wrench. I used the 10 side, and that's what took off the hard line. Highly emphasize to use this to just prevent it from threading. And I used this to pull off the cotter pin. After I straightened it out, I used it to pull out that loop. It was kind of hard at the angle because I didn't want to bend because my back would hurt, but yeah, so far it's good to go. Now let's go put in the clutch master cylinder. So here is the new clutch master cylinder in the bag, and as you can see, it does not have a replacement rubber gasket or the cotter pin or even the screw. So you got to remove the what from this one, which are still in the car, and put that there. Also attach the reservoir, obviously, so I'm going to go attach the reservoir while it's out of the car to make it easier, and then screw it back in. Now let's open this up. So here's the clutch master cylinder out of the bag, which this fitting actually threads in, so you're going to put that fitting after you stuff it through the firewall. Now I also need to move the tank, which I'll do right now, using a set of pliers to take off the clamp right there, and then we're going to go put it back in. Alright, so I put the gasket on the clutch master cylinder, and ooh, it's a little wet already. That's kind of interesting. You put the plunger part back when you get in the car. I reattached the master cylinder, which probably started brake fluid, that's why it's coming out. And then the hard line here, see, as you can tell, this is where the clutch master cylinder would go through to the cab. Hand thread the hard line a little bit to make sure you don't thread it, and then use your box wrench or flare wrench, the 10mm, to go attach it to complete the, and don't forget to obviously take off the cap off the new one. And I'll meet you back in the cab. Sorry about the lighting, it's just I didn't think it would get that dark that quick. So of course reinsert it, and don't forget that rubber gasket, of course. tighten the metal fitting from the clutch line to the clutch master cylinder, and hand thread it just to make sure you don't thread it accidentally when you're trying to use the wrench. Then use the flare wrench the rest of the way, and then bolt on the reservoir after you've securely attached it using the clamp. Now we're going back in the cab to go reinstall the nuts and the pin. And of course, when you installed it, I hope you noticed not to put that back, the plunger, like I said earlier. This is going to be installed in the car, which you should see it come out right over here. See, it came back through the hole. Aha! Now you gotta put this, thread this onto the clutch master cylinder, and then we're gonna put the pin in, and then put the cotter pin through it, put it back the way you took it out, of course, and then the two nuts. So some quick notes when trying to put it in the car. There's an adjusting bolt here. I would match it up with this one first, the old one, so you'll know how far to put this plunger attachment. Otherwise you do what I did and just fish, and a lot of times you'll get bolts that fall into this little cavity here. There normally is an attachment there on the top and a screw on the bottom, which mine are missing because I've gotten stuff stuck in there. Anytime a bolt falls through that side right there, it goes in here. So, word of advice, if that does happen, that's where it is. Take it out. Very easy to take off and put back. Might happen a few times, so you might want to wait and just take it off. That was a pain in the butt. But I got the clutch pedal in. Make sure it's flush against the firewall and bolted in, along with the hard line, which you hand tightened, and the two bolts for the reservoir. Now before you add fluid in here, let's change the slave cylinder, which should be fully empty at this point, which made a mess. See, I made a mess on my fan, so I'm not going to start this tonight. Now, I know and I've heard that there's just two bolts on this, so let's give it a try. Alright, so ooh, that's a mess right down there. Some went on the car, but most of it went into that bleeder, so that's okay. And now there's a groove in there where the new plunger will fit for the slave cylinder, which you should be able to feel for it based on what I've heard from my mechanic friends when you're inserting the old one. Now let's unbolt this. See if I can put down the light somewhere that'll give us a little bit of illumination. It's probably not the best place I put it. And for this rusty clutch master cylinder in the front of it, trying to hold my light and camera together. My ring light doesn't work for this apparently. Ooh, sorry. I used my swivel wrench, and there are two bolts, two 12s right in the front of it, 1 and 2 right there, and then one fitting here, which is the 10mm hard line. So you use the 10mm wrench right there, the box wrench, so you don't thread it. And let's take this off, and then I'll show you installing the new one. A very important tip, so you don't bend the hard line on the slave cylinder. Unbolt it before unbolting the two bolts. I got lucky, I started to notice. I tried to bolt it back on, it didn't work, so I unbolted the hard line on the other side, but I had to take out the radiator hose. It's up there. And now we're going to go install the hard line onto the new slave cylinder. With your clutch master cylinder assembled, which some come pre-assembled with the plunger and the boots. Mine you had to insert, and I kind of messed up the boot. Hopefully it doesn't affect anything. We're going to put this and connect into the clutch. Alright, so let me just take a photo of the clutch just to show what we're going to put into. So there's this boot right here. So inside this, if you feel it, there's a place for the clutch master cylinder ball to go into, and that'll basically it'll help control the clutch. You put the two bolts here, and if you did what I did by accident and forgot to unbolt the slave cylinder first, this is where that hard line goes into. But I was able to reconnect the hard line after I did a little bit of move of the radiator hose to get the top one, and we're gonna just put it back in. I'm not gonna film that obviously, but the plunger part will obviously go into that boot there to help it press it. So let's install it, then I'm gonna come back when it's installed to just show you what it should look like. Alright, so I got the slave master cylinder and the slave cylinder in. Thread one bolt at a time, so get one in so you have an idea where the next one will go. In my case, because I bent the hard line, it was very hard, but I just basically reattached one side of the hard line back onto the slave cylinder before installing it, and then I had to bend it to fit perfectly here. So hopefully it doesn't leak. Now it's time to bleed it. I'm going to add some fluid in my bleeder and then bleed the clutch the old-fashioned way with one person, gravity bleed. So basically I'm going to pull the clutch pedal up because it sank to the floor, have the bleeder connected, open the bleeder, then press it down, leave it set, and then just repeat it until I get pressure. Let's see if this works. So the gravity bleeding method took me about 15 tries, which is because it's just me. So basically you'd fill the reservoir and monitor how it's going, and then since your clutch will have no resistance, you basically let it sink to the ground and press it down and then open the valve. Basically you do it until your clutch basically goes back where it has resistance. So in my case, I have it to the point of where I have the metal bar. So with your bleeder and your wrench, your 8mm wrench in this case, you open it up, you'll hear my breaker bar, well not my breaker bar, my jack bar drop because it has so much pressure at that point. When I open it, didn't sink this time. Probably has enough. And then you close it while it's down like that, and then you get to the point of where how high you want it, and then it'll obviously have enough resistance to where it was when you were first driving it, or maybe it was in bad shape when you got it. It'll probably be better. Like right now it feels stiffer than it ever was. Let's try this again. So this here, basically right now you see it's down to the floor, and the first few times it'll just be down there and you have to pull it up manually, but it'll gradually build resistance. See if I take it off, pull it up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, probably built up pressure now. See how much resistance it has. See here, there's the pedal. As you can see, it has enough, it has pretty much better than before resistance. I'm just going to give it one more shot. So now the valve's closed, you press this to the bottom. Be careful if you do use a jack bar on your seats. Usually you want a pad, but my seat is in bad shape, so basically we're going to do it this way. I'm going to have it depressed and press to the ground, then open the valve. Open the valve. See here. Use the wrench, open the valve. Ooh, make sure you don't take out the bleeder or you'll make a mess like I just did. Open it. You're going to let the air out, and then you're going to tighten it and go back to the car and pull up the pedal. And do that as many times as you need for it to build resistance. It's annoying, but gets the job done. And at that point, you're done. Oosh. The bleeder came off, which I mean I'm done anyway.